The blue economy represents 5.4 million jobs in Europe and 500 billion euros as part of the European economy. Joining me in the studio today to discuss the maritime culture of European policy is David Kerr, Maritime Attaché with Malta's permanent representation to the EU, and MEP Ricardo Serrão Santos from Portugal, Social Democrats. Welcome to both of you. Let's start with the blue economy. Ricardo, this is something most people just attribute to fishing, but the blue economy isn't just about fishing, is it?
Oh no, the blue economy is not devoted solely to fish, and we look to these numbers. It's also shipping, it's also aquaculture, it's tourism is also a component important. But the numbers you just said shows that the blue economy is an important share in the global economy already, and we want it to grow. So we have to plan, in fact, how the blue economy will grow. If you look to some reports like the OECD report, that clearly shows that the two most important activities in the maritime sector, one in terms of employment at a global scale, at the world scale, is fishing, and the other in terms of economic value is gas and oil exploitation.
The Maltese Presidency has set out to create not just a competitive but a sustainable blue economy. What was your approach?
Our approach was we took a twofold approach. One was what can we get from the sea and what can we give back to the sea. And obviously we focused primarily on the Sustainable Development Goals, the UN Sustainable Development, with specific emphasis on SDG 14. So we set out, let's say, a roadmap based on the recent communication on ocean government, which the Commission has recently published. And we set, let's say, a roadmap in terms of what action needs to be done to implement the SDG 14, which at the end, the end result will be the sustainable use of the ocean. Now, when we're talking about sustainability, the most challenging aspect is that we have, let's say, we know that sustainability is social, economical, and environment. Now, the environmental pillar has been, let's say, reinvented or redefined as anything to be done within a sustainable manner. We have to plan it and act based on an ecosystem-based approach, which is obviously, it is the reality, love it or hate it. We need to ensure that the ecosystem is thriving.
But that requires innovation, doesn't it?
Exactly. It requires data, it requires information, it requires skill, it requires knowledge. So this is a new phase we're getting into. I mean, this introduction, the introduction of the ecosystem-based approach came through the Maritime Spatial Planning Directive, where it has been, let's say, a legal obligation for member states to plan when in terms of actions being taken in the oceans and seas in an ecosystem-based approach. It's now legally, you are legally obliged to take this principle in one way or another. But to do that, we need now to look how we can actually implement it.
Let me ask Ricardo, how do we implement it? Is the funding there to translate this from a strong policy into a reality?
It's difficult to say. At least the European Union and the European Commission is doing a lot of efforts to put a lot of some investment on issues related with conservation, protection, and valuation of ecosystem service. That's something we have not talk about because that is not a direct value, but they have an indirect value, and that has to be taken in account when we talk about the economy of the oceans. The production of oxygen by the algae, or the production of oxygen and the restoration of the environments. If they are not there, if we then let this to degrade, we lose this ecosystem service that has effect on for instance, the fish stocks, of which we take the direct income. So I think that when we talk about the economy of the oceans, the non-direct monetary value, which is the ecosystem service produced by many organisms in the oceans and by the ocean in itself, has to be taken in account.
Dave, this is a case of investing to win. we don't protect our ecosystem, we don't sustain our fish stock without investing in innovation and technologies and systems which can do that. Which we develop our economy to do that. Is this something which the Maltese Presidency had in mind? This is about jobs and growth as well as just sustainability?
In terms of, I mean, now that was, let's say, the sustainable part, right? Then we also focused on taking blue growth to the next level. I mean, the blue economy to the next level. Now, obviously, as I pointed out, there are a lot of challenges in order to ensure the sustainable approach. And also we focused on, let's say, funding, the necessary funding, because at the end of the day, you need the necessary support in order to move forward, right? So these are all elements that we have taken into consideration, for example, the use of public-private partnerships, in terms of when it comes to innovation and in terms of research and development. So I think now when we're talking about blue growth, we have to take it to the next level, especially when we're talking about research and innovation. And I mean, basically it's research and innovation, which we need to...
Horizon 2020 is Horizon part of that, FP7.
Yes, Horizon 2020, for example, I mean, it missed a lot to capture the maritime aspect, right? So we missed a lot there. So our message, which we have also included in the Blue Growth Declaration, which is the Council conclusion, is that coming next to the next financial framework, let's ensure that the blue economy is taken into consideration, that the necessary funds are there in order to instill the required skills, instill the required knowledge in the youths, right? Because we, at the end of the day, we need to equip the workforce to ensure it's not only to be sustainable, but to keep on having the blue economy growing and existing.
I don't think that this is low on the agendas. And I believe that most of the framework, all of the framework programs of the European Commission and the European Union have been rather successful in terms of funding good, innovative research. But let me say that some innovation leads to bad. The 20th century was a century of innovation, and some of the innovation went on very wrong highways. And that's why we are in the situation as we are now. We have to tackle this issue of innovation with a new eyes. It is not only to progress and to grow anyway as it is.
In the terms of the environmental obligations, the United Nations, the Paris Agreement, United States taking a step back from this has left a gap for Europe to become a leader. In terms of maritime governance, is Europe becoming a maritime leader when it comes to governance?
Yes, when it comes to the Paris Agreement and maritime, I can give an example of in terms of maritime transport. You know that maritime transport has not been included under the Paris Agreement, but still obviously it is tied up and related, and it falls under the International Maritime Organization. So under our presidency, and as a result of all what's happening outside Europe, Malta has ensured to assist the coordination process and take a stronger lead for Europe and its member states within International Maritime Organization to send a clear message to the outside world that the maritime sector is taking the matter seriously, has taken the matter seriously, and will continue taking the matter seriously when it comes to controlling decarbonization of the maritime sector.
But it's not just decarbonization. They also looked at fishing stock as well, and the registration of fleets which perhaps operated illegally in different areas.
Yes. Now this comes to the issue of our cooperation with third states, right? And how Europe needs to move closer in terms of cooperating with third states and assisting third states. So, for example, when it comes going back to greenhouse gas emissions, there has been funds directed to third states who need to beef up their knowledge, their capacity when it comes to addressing. When it comes to fisheries, for example, we emphasized in the Council conclusions for ocean governance the need to do partnership with the third states in order to, basically the bottom end will be a level playing field. And once we achieve a level playing field, then we achieve the sustainable aspect.
Okay. You have an event coming up, Ricardo, looking at SMEs and the role of SMEs, innovation in the maritime sector as well. How do you see Europe's SMEs participating in the maritime sector?
At my knowledge, in fact, SMEs are really an important component of the blue economy. And in terms of innovation, there are nowadays a set of SMEs that are directed to tackle some of the problems that we have created. SMEs working on algae and having new materials to produce substitutes of plastic.
The key is partnerships. How are we going to define partnerships? Those partnerships we need to build trust at the end of the day. So that partnership must be equivalent to trust. And once we have trust, then with non-EU member states, then we can continue being leaders, but on the other hand, embrace third states in order to, at the end of the day, ratify the relevant international convention and implement the relevant international convention.
We're coming to the end of the program. Let me ask you, has Malta brought maritime policy to a new level with this presidency?
Yes, from this presidency, yes, of course. And we have a great commissar. We had John Borg in the past was a great commissar, and as I mentioned, we had wonderful lawyers and ambassadors in the past, in the 80s and 70s, that worked wonderfully leading the issues of the international law of the sea. It's a small country, but with great maritime and ocean vision.
Ocean vision, David Kerr. When the Maltese presidency finishes, what will its legacy be for maritime policy?
The legacy will be that I think these 6 months have been, I strongly believe, a celebration in terms of the marine and maritime sector. We have, as much as possible, create awareness that this sector needs to remain sustainable, the sector needs to be competitive, and we need to ensure that we invest both in terms of the human resources and both in terms of financially to ensure that it will remain competitive. We must not forget that we are not living on our own. It's a global industry, it's a global sector. We are faced with competition every day. So our message in a nutshell was that the maritime sector is a modern industry. It is embracing and has embraced digitalization and also embraced the challenges in terms of environmental aspects to ensure that this remains a modern and a sustainable sector, which obviously will in turn provide jobs and opportunities for the generations to come.
Thank you. That's all we have time for today on the presidency on maritime policy. And we thank David Kerr from the Maltese Perm Rep and Ricardo Serrão Santos, MEP from Portugal. I'm Brian Maguire.